Next up for this heater control panel will be to take it apart and get everything cleaned up and put it back together again, and then get ready for installation. So the first thing I'm going to do is to remove these handles here that work the control cables. I've already taken two off. What you got to do is just turn this around to the side, and if you can see there, right from the side, you should have access to a little cotter key setting, and back off on that, and that should remove. Same thing with the panel right here, is to remove that, and that should slide off and you get rid of those. Okay, so there they are. They'll be polished up and cleaned up and put back on. The next step would be to remove these two screws, and I've got this all set up right here. So we'll go ahead and remove these two and pull out the cable system from the panel. Each screw will come out, and hold on to those. Those screws will be cleaned up later on. Get it to where you can do it by hand pretty soon. Just get in there and pull it out with your hand. Not quite yet. So we're going to back off on these two screws, and that should separate the panel. That should separate the panel from the cable system. Now these cables here, I can see that the very end one has broken off, and it should be right there. It's held on by this piece of plastic here, strong plastic, and bolted on, but it's broken off the end here. So we have a choice. We can either replace this whole cable setup for about $25 at National Parts Depot, or I can go ahead and set that in place and try to put some JB weld on it and let that dry overnight, and that may give it a good strong hold, and just use it. So I'll make a determination of that later on, whether I want to buy a whole new 3 cable piece, or go ahead and try to put that in there and put some JB weld on it and hold that. All these cables just slide off on the end. They slide off. And we're going to remove these two screws here that hold the cables onto the main mechanism here that works your control. So we're going to back off on these two right here, so we can take off these cables and either replace it with a whole new 3 cable setup, or go ahead and try to repair the one cable that broke off right here with some JB weld and let that dry overnight, and we'll see how that does. So we got to remove these 2 screws. Okay. Eventually they should be able to come out with your fingers like that. Put that over there. That'll be cleaned up later on and polished and put back on. And then we'll get the other one out. Okay. Put that over, and these will all be polished up and cleaned. So there's our cable setup right there. And then the third one goes right here, but you see it broke off. It broke off. There should be an attachment right there. So we may try some JB weld or get a new one. We'll see. So I'm going to put that off to the side. And there's our cable control system. This will all be cleaned up and lubricated and put back together. The electricals will all be cleaned up. This will all be cleaned up. Check the wires, put back on. And of course our panel will be cleaned up and put back together for the next installment. I got these cables out, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to clean them. I'm going to take some steel wool and get them really clean and shiny on each end so they're really shiny there, and I'll spend more time on it. And then I'll go ahead and get the other end and pull it out and get it really shiny and cleaned up, get all the rust off it. And then I'll go ahead and go up and down on the cable itself to get all the cut off of that. And then when I get that all cleaned up, I'll be able to put it together in a much cleaner form. I'll do the same thing here with these two. I'll go ahead and get some steel wool and just kind of pull these out as far as they'll go. And we'll steel wool those and get those nice and clean until they're nice and shiny. And then I'll get the other end and do the same thing to the other end, and we'll get those nice, pull those out and get them nice and clean and shiny with steel wool. And I'll put more time later on and do it real good later on, but just to show you, you know, how I do it when I want to clean these cables up. And then I'll go ahead and run this up and down the cable itself to get all the crud off. Then with these cables, I want to get them working really, really easy. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to take some of this WD-40, and I'm just going to spray some WD-40 down inside the cables on each end, so that they will go up and down, the wires will go up and down the cables much easier with less stress. And then I'll just kind of work them back and forth so they can get worked in like that and go up and down a lot easier. A lot less stress on the connections later on. Now with the main mechanical part of the heater controls, I'm just going to clean it up. I'll spend about 20-30 minutes and just steel wool it and get it all cleaned up. And I can also use a wheel, a wire wheel if I want. But I'm just going to go ahead and spend about 15-20 minutes and get all this nice and shiny. And then I'm going to get some WD-40 and I'm going to kind of lubricate all inside here and then work those back and forth and get those working really easy. And then of course I'm going to dry it really good, get it all nice and dry. And I will do the same thing with the electrical. That's the electrical. I'm going to go ahead and steel wool the electrical and get that all cleaned. And I'll put more time in it later on, but just to show you, go through all the wires and I'll try to clean the wires, get the wires nice and clean. Steel wool the wires up and down. Get those wires nice and clean. Get this nice and clean. I'll throw a shot of again WD-40 in there to get the electrical working nice and smooth and get it ready for installation. With the panel, to help get it cleaned up, what I'm going to do is use a degreaser on it. I'm going to spray a degreaser and let that soak in for a few minutes, maybe rub it down a little bit. And then I'm going to get my steel wool and I'm going to use my steel wool to get it nice and shiny all over until it shines up really nice. It may take me about 20-30 minutes to do this. And then later on I'm going to go ahead and tape over this chrome, and I'm going to spray it with a nice brand new black spray paint, and it should look pretty nice when we're done.